Matt Bloomfield's side beaten at Bramall Lane by Chris Wilder's Sheffield United, and then a very, very scrappy 0-0 draw at the CBS Arena ends the week on a relative positive note going into a big league fixture tomorrow night, and also, of course, the continuation of the FA Cup. Welcome back to Walking the London Road. Connor back with us. Connor, you were, I was going to say enjoying, but it's a bit far to say you were enjoying the egg chasing on Saturday, but good that the weekend ended on a positive point rather than a loss like we saw midweek.
Yeah, the vibes wouldn't have been very vibey if we'd have picked up a point at Bramall Lane and then got done over at the CBS. So I think that we all have a spring in our step, hopefully going into Norwich City.
100%. Let's very quickly talk about the Sheffield United game. Not for too much longer because, we know that we just weren't up to the standard. We're finally seeing the Sheffield United that their squad kind of warrants. Good for Miles Harris to get his first goal in Oxford United shirt. Their equaliser comes from certain players not picking up their runners in the area, and then second and third is just a really, really well taken strike, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought for the first 20 minutes we actually played okay. We played some decent stuff, and I think even with our injuries, we were putting a good account of ourselves. But good stuff, good put away by Pert Harris on the rebound. But I think after Sheffield United scored their first, I think you could see confidence just go a fair bit. And I think that on paper, Sheffield United have a fair better squad than us, and I think that came to fruition.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So that's the Sheffield United game out of the way. Just to kind of give you an idea, folks, what we're going to be talking about is, of course, the Coventry City game is going to take up the majority of this episode, but we're also obviously going to round out Oxford United's transfer business with a lot happening on deadline day and the days following. So let's, of course, talk about Coventry. Going into this fixture, there was a lot of conflicting thoughts, obviously, off the back of the loss to Sheffield United, but Connor, I think you and Will still thought we might get something out of that game because it would just be so Oxford United that we would.
Yeah, it's just the Oxford United way. This season, we seem to have been playing good and actually putting decent account of ourselves against teams towards the upper end or teams that were relegated from the Premier League. And it's just Oxford United past history that we pull out a result where we didn't think that we would get it. And I thought the exact same was going to happen today at Coventry. And it would not have surprised me if we'd have come away nicking a 1-0 win.
So let's talk about the lineup, of course. So the lineup was relatively unchanged from the defeat at Bramall Lane, with two exceptions. So, of course, Jamie Cummings started in goal, a back three, the 3-4-3 continuing of Sam Long, Mikhail Helik and Kieran Brown. Chris Makoso and Sam Long would kind of rotate in that right back role with Ruskin, one of the new additions on deadline day, on the left hand side. McDonald and Brannigan in the centre of the park with Miles Harris through the centre, and Shane Poaheta and Manku, another deadline day arrival, finishing it out. I think the most talk pre-match was, of course, about Miles Harris, his role through the centre. For the most part of his so far Oxford United career, he's played out wide, but there was a lot of talk, and you kind of brought us up to this in the group chat, Connor, that from Brentford's side of things, they think that his future will be through the centre of the park.
Yeah, he's obviously played out on the left for all the games that he's been with us so far, that he started out on that end side, but I think that Brentford see him more as a central man, whether it be centre in the park or even up top, whether it be as a striker or maybe even in false nine position. So, it's quite. We've seen that Matt Bloomfield isn't afraid to make big calls either in the starting lineup or during the game, and I think that this was another big one to not have a recognised number 9 starting for us.
Definitely. And another point is on the wing backs. We mentioned that Makoso and Long were sort of rotating in and out for the most part. I have to correct myself that Sam Long was playing as the right fullback. But what it did mean is that Ruben Ruskin on his Oxford United debut was a lot more attacking. You look back to previous Oxford United teams where you've got one of the fullbacks or the wing backs in this situation is able to bomb forward, get involved in the attacking phase of play. The other sits back, creates a bit of a back four to help make you a bit more defensively solid. With those two men in front, unsurprisingly, we were very, very difficult to break down in a super low block.
Yeah, and I think that's more likely going to be the pattern of play going forward. As you know, when you score goals, but also points. As Big Sam Allardyce once said, I think I've brought it up once on here before. Points, clean sheets get you points, and points are what keeps you up. So, and also is we have in Ruskin a natural left wing back, whereas we were playing, say, whether it be the likes of Curry or Greg Lee, who are their more traditional role as left back, and asking them to play in a left wing back position. So it offers a nice balance in the team if that's the way that we're going to be going forward for the rest of the season with a back three/back five.
Just to touch on the two men in the middle of the pitch, Cameron Brannigan and Jamie McDonnell, there was some conversation at the end of the game about the praise McDonnell needed and all that kind of thing. Jerome Sale of BBC Radio Oxford brought up a really good point in the sense of if Jamie McDonnell has had a phenomenal game, it's likely he's not actually done his job all that well because, the opposition's got in behind us and he's having to make those last-ditch interceptions or challenges. I thought in this game he went about his business very, very well, very composed. Doing that ball winner kind of stopper role in the defensive midfield area that we've been lacking because as much as Volk's able to do that, McDonnell is a lot more mobile than Volk's.
Yeah, McDonnell and Volksby both being in that role in the sixth. You're right in that you know that they've had a good game when you don't really notice them. Like you don't really. It's only until after the game you say, "Oh yeah, they were really good. They put in a good, decent performance."
Yeah.
And I think especially like with McDonnell, with no disrespect to Will Volks, much younger. He's about 10 years younger than him. So as you say, he's more mobile, more agile, able to get around the pitch a bit better, and maybe has that more durability that unfortunately Will Volks has lost after he's been an EFL stalwart, shall we say.
So let's talk about the flow of that game because much like our trip to the CBS last season, it was pretty much one-way traffic. They had 24 attempts, 5 on target, missed, I think it was 3 clear-cut opportunities by most stat packs, whereas we had 4 shots, 0 on target. It was always going to be one of those kind of games, wasn't it, kind of with the quality that Coventry have got up top.
Yeah, and that's even with some key men missing, such as I believe Brendan Asante's out as well at the moment, who's one of their main goal threats. But yeah, I think that from the result and the performance, unfortunately for us, Sam, I think it says a lot more about Coventry City than it does about us, I think, unfortunately. And it seems that even any championship or EFL podcast seems to put it that way. And to be honest, I usually get quite annoyed when we do get a result against a big club and they don't really speak about little old Oxford. But I think from this result you have to say that it does say more about Coventry than it does about Oxford. Yeah, we defended resolute and we stuck in and we showed fight and grit, which if we play like that for the rest of the season and we go down, I don't think that a lot of fans will have many issues with. But we do also have to concede that Coventry did have a fair few very, very good opportunities that on any other day they should be at least sticking away 2 or 3.
100%. Matt Grimes had 2 big opportunities from the edge of the area. Had you right, there's a lot of talk in the Coventry fan base about had you right and his performance in that game. But it was clear the game plan Lampard was trying to implement. At the same time, Bloomfield made the point after the game that in his tenure so far, we've conceded 3 goals. Although you could say on the flip side, of course, 3 draws. We didn't score a goal in any of those draws. So is it more, our lack of quality? We've talked about time and time again in front of goal. And we've just gone, okay, sod it. We're going to frustrate the hell out of the opposition in our defensive third. When you look at, if you look at the momentum chart of that game, it's one-way traffic. It looks like basically an attack versus defence training exercise. Our best chance of that game obviously comes through a man we've talked about a fair few times, not for the most part in the best light, that being Shemi Poheta. Sam Long plays a really good ball through. Shemi, playing on the right-hand side as per usual, cuts in and tries to bend it into the top left corner. If he got his head up and looked across, he would have seen Omaku had made a good little run. But as much as, I will credit Shemi for the run and all that kind of thing, it's another instance, Connor, of Shemi having too much time really to make the decision, and the one he does make is a selfish one.
Yeah, he's lightning quick, and he's packed full of pace, but as you say, his decision making is just not there whatsoever, and that's his biggest downfall. And that's probably why, myself included, why a lot of fans, they just get so infuriated and frustrated with him because of the decisions that he's making in that short amount of time that he has to make them. Maybe showing why he didn't have that long a spell at both Swansea and Norwich, maybe why there was a lot of talk, and some fans weren't exactly disappointed that there was talk that he was going to move back to Poland in the January window. But you know, as he said and pointed out, it's just so infuriating that he doesn't make that key decision, because he can pop up every now and then with, you know, a fantastic bit of decision making or quick reactions where he has to, you know, you think about against Millwall, you think about against Ipswich, where he didn't have a lot of time to think and react whatsoever. It's just that inconsistency, which is really is his biggest downfall.
And of course, from that point, it was one-way traffic. We've talked about the big chances Coventry had. I'm not going to go too much into the big talking point from Oxford fans, and that's the referee. Obviously, we'll talk about the Will Lancashire red card, because I'll say, of course, the second booking is a booking. It's one of those strikers fouls that you make, kind of running to the ball, want to make a mark on the defender. I don't think it helps Lancashire that Latibodiere is shorter for a centre-half. I think if you've got a centre-half up against him that's his height, that maybe he doesn't go down as like a sack of spuds. But we can't have any complaints about that. What we can have complaints, though, is about the first booking. Because from what I've seen watching it back, it stems from Malsbert Harris is fouled, but it's given against him because he was also tugging at the Coventry player's shirt. Lancashire is obviously really angry about that, and says it appears all of 3 words to the referee, and he pulls out a card for dissent. Now, of course, you don't want players, you know, effing and blinding relentlessly at the referee, and given Lancashire came on as a substitute, I don't remember him being given a warning by the ref. So it's one of those, some would say, a referee, you know, struggling to control a game. I think maybe he's just been a bit silly in, you know, having a younger player shouting at him and gone, okay, you know, just to get you to calm down, I'm going to give you a booking. I don't know, that's me kind of, you know, talking out my arse there, Connor. What do you think?
Well, I don't think that we can really say. I find it hard to have an opinion on it because we don't know what was said, and what was said has obviously been deemed enough to, you know, for a yellow card to be given, whether it was what he said or how he said it. But either way, he got a yellow card at the end of the day, and you know, you've mentioned about his second yellow. He should have been more careful with the second yellow. He's only got himself to blame, and he did come out and apologise to the fans on social media afterwards. I'm not a big fan of that, by the way, about players apologising on social media after cocking up. The best way that you can do it is by putting in a good performance in the next outing. So unfortunately, Sam, I don't really think that we can comment too much about what's been said. The referee, if for what it's worth, say I wasn't there, but watching some of the 3-minute highlight package that you get on ITV, he did seem incredibly inconsistent, and I think that both managers had grievances over him.
At the same time, as you mentioned, we can feel a little bit relieved that it seemed after he sent Will Lancashire off, he decided he wasn't going to give Oxford United as many yellow cards, because, I mean, we should mention that from what I remember looking at, Coventry got a single yellow card for Sakamoto, and they committed 6 fouls. I think we committed, it was 10 fouls, and got, including Matt Bloomfield's, 9 bookings. So that's almost a booking for every challenge made. You could say, you know, there are some, you know, there are going to be some in there that are bookings, no doubt about it. But also there's, you know, trying to let the game flow and all that kind of thing. But we can feel lucky, the fact that I mean, late on, Cameron Brannigan makes a challenge. It's a foul, and he kind of stays down because I think he got hit in the face. But also, he's fouled his man. He's already on a yellow card. Maybe Cam gets a bit of a leeway for the fact that he's the skipper. And it's in the dying embers. Frank Lampard thinks Kieran Brown was quite lucky. I'm not entirely sure myself, but we could have been maybe down to 10 a little bit earlier than we were when Lancashire went off.
Some of our fan base over the past couple of weeks have been not obsessed, but they've been pointing out the fact that how far low down we were in the fair play table, and it shot us up a few places, getting 9 bookings, 1 red card. So, but to be honest, Sam, that's what we need. We need to, if it's yellow cards, either through what's the word I'm looking for, game management, or whether it's through leaving a little bit in. That's the way that it's going to have to be. But obviously, knowing and running the risk about any possible suspensions, which is Will Lancashire has unfortunately found out.
You're right to bring up the fair play table, because after the game at Bramall Lane, there was some talk about the fact we were so high up. I think we were second only to Sheffield Wednesday, and I mean, we spoke about this last season in the sense of, do Oxford need to be nastier in the situation we're in? To a certain degree, yeah. I think more so last season because of who was in charge and it more suited his style of play. Bloomfield theoretically wants to play better football, so you'd expect us to do expect us to be a bit higher in the fair play table. But good to see, the fight. Because it has felt at some points this season we've been slightly lacking that.
Who was Bloomfield's master at Wickham? I feel like that he's learnt from his, he's took the teachings from his master, and now that's just what we are in the Championship. If you catch my drift.
Yeah, 100%. So, talking about player performances, we mentioned about Jane McDonnell. I want to focus on a man who, even though we picked up 1 point, I think has had a fantastic 7 days, and that is Chris Makoso. This lad, I have been super impressed with, Connor. Given the, some of the reviews that we had when he came in from Luton, I think they'll feel very vindicated and quite angry that their club have let him go. He's just a beast at the back alongside Mikhail Helik. Like, if we're putting those two in a partnership, we're not conceding set pieces. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, Luton's loss is our gain, but I think from the outside looking in, a lot of fans around the Championship would have been looking at our business and saying that we've loaned in 2 players from League One. They might be thinking that's a sign of desperation, but I'm not sure whether you want to talk about Ruskin. But with with Christ Makoso, he's come in and he's fit into the system like a glove. Because at Luton, they were trying to shoehorn him in as like a right back, and he just wasn't working whatsoever. You could see that there was just all confidence gone from him, and it looked like that he really kind of didn't want to play the style or didn't want to be there. So him coming in and fitting in at the right side of a back 3, you can see how much more natural he is, and then he's alongside, a very, very well commanding leader of the back line, and Mikhail Helik, and also having Kieran Brown as well. I think he's just come in. What now? That's I was going to say 2 clean sheets, but it wasn't, unfortunately, because of the 3 against Sheffield United. But he still came out with Pert Harris on top as one of the shining stars. So hopefully, if he carries on this, then Luton fans will be saying, "Yep, we told you so," and we'll also be knocking on the door saying, "So, how much do you want for this bloke?"
So on that, Jerome Sell mentioned on the episode of the Dub today that there was a lot of talk about the fee being £3 million. From what Jerome's been told, there's a lot that has to be achieved for Luton to get £3 million. So it's likely to be significantly lower to get him in. And I'd say activate that right now, because this lad is 21 years old, and you'll probably know what I mean when I say this, is that we talked so often about, with Ben Nelson, about his presence, about, his everything kind of made him a quality centre-back for us alongside Elliot Moore at that time, and then Helik towards the back end. Makoso is so similar when it comes to not just the physical stuff, but his match intelligence for a 21-year-old is sublime. There were so many fantastic, defensive runs he was making against Sheffield United. Really clever when bringing the ball out of defence in the first half against Coventry. And this lad, we were told, isn't great with the ball at his feet. He's not John Stones from a couple of years ago, but he'll do for the time being. And obviously that's an area of the pitch, he's 21 years old. That's an area he can absolutely improve in. This lad is, we said so many times last season with Ben Nelson, don't fall in love with loan players. I think this is an occasion where we can fall in love, because the chances are that we hopefully will sign this lad, because, like I said, 21, but he's a senior head on young shoulders. The way he commands, and the way he goes about his business, I should say, and I think the way he interacts with the players around him. This is going to sound like a big shout, but I think for some club in the future, I don't know if it will be us or Luton or whoever, I think this lad has got all the attributes to be a captain.
Oh, do you think so? Do you think that you think he can go to the Premier League?
I think, if not the Premier League, high-end Championship, just because, like I say, 21 years old, his defensive awareness, the way he conducts himself is all... It's something that you don't expect to see from a player of that age. And we said it last season about Ben Nelson. I think Ben Nelson should be considered, higher than Ronnie Edwards when it comes to England's centre-back prospects. Makoso, I think, the Congolese national team have got a real star on their hands when it comes to this lad. Yeah,
as we say, hopefully it will... Hopefully he'll be with us, and if we do manage to get him in on a permanent, then it's another player that's as after Rowett has left, and we're starting to re-go for that mould of buy, hopefully with the aim of buying low and selling high, which is what we've done, which is what our club identity is. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking, Curry, McDonnell, Makoso. Maybe we'll talk about another one in just a second. Like I say, that's what we want to see, is these young players coming from, League One, League Two, who the club think are ready to step up. And, we've talked about McDonnell. He's already looked like he's made a brilliant step up to the Championship. Jack Curry, we've spoken about multiple times, the ways he's adapted to the league. Makoso, the way he's stepped back up, obviously played the back end of the campaign for Luton in the Championship. He's reacclimatised really well, and there were some concerns from Luton fans about he was still adapting to life in English football. I think that first half a season in League One has done him the world of good, because it meant he realised that in the English game you've got less time on the ball, and that meant when he comes into a side fighting relegation in the Championship again, that his brain is already working at a pace that's up to the standard of this league.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to it's going to keep us in good stead, especially as you mentioned out with all the young players that we have, and like good quality young players as well. Even with some that were touted as, albeit briefly, that were touted as possibly leaving in the January window. I'm sure that they're going to come back. That there'll be more. That there'll be more vultures circling around them in the summer, especially if we do drop down.
Long may the fantastic run of Chris Makoso continue. Right, let's round up the January transfer window. Now the transfer window has slammed shut. It never slides nice and slowly and quietly shut, does it? So... No. Let's talk about the departures first. Let's get on to, it's nice to finish on the exciting signings and stuff, isn't it? Very interesting in the last couple of days of the window. Two contract terminations to talk about. Two players whose contracts were up in the summer, and the club agreed with them that, they could leave and get a bit of a payout. Those being Jordan Thornley and this podcast's favourite, sometimes hero, sometimes antagonist, Matty Phillips. Let's very quickly touch on Jordan Thornley. Obviously came back to us in the promotion season after a brilliant half season in, what was it, 21, 22, Connor? And we
Yeah.
thought, this lad will be sensational. Let's get him back in, all that kind of stuff. But, we talked about it at the time last season. He's not really been able to establish himself back in an Oxford United shirt. Struggle with injury, struggle with the odd poor performance, and not being favoured by managers.
No, no, yeah, no, no. He hasn't been. He wasn't the same as he was when he first came in. I think it was under Robinson, and we could see that there was a bit of a player there, and the old feud with Blackpool reignited with him being recalled. Yeah, as you say, it's unfortunate because you think second when he comes back second time around, you're thinking, oh, we've got the same player, but just for some reason or another, it just didn't work out. Am I right in thinking that he came back under Liam Manning?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, and see, even then during that promotion season, he didn't really get much of a run out. He's come in and put a few decent cameos and performances here and there. So, you got to give him his kudos and his due on that.
Good luck, Jordan Thornley. And as for Matt Phillips, this is a super, super weird one because obviously last season he was the most derided man in Oxford United shirt, I think it's fair to say. We were questioning why we signed him to play him so often. We all thought he was going to be a bit part player. We were questioning what the hell's going on with, why is he on such a big contract, all that kind of stuff. And then I think had one good performance in that Norwich game last year. And then this season had two good performances, got injured again, came back for two cameos and has been released. It's been a super weird time for Matt Phillips at Oxford United, isn't it?
I think that might have been more like we both know it's not working. There's only 6 months left, so we might as well just call it quits. I'm surprised. I'm surprised he just didn't sit on his reported, alleged, supposed 15 grand a week, as I say, allegedly, and just run his contract out. For being honest, that's what we would have done.
Absolutely. Best of luck, Matt Phillips, because he's a relatively local boy. Best mates with Rob Hall and all that kind of stuff. Best of luck, Matt Phillips, because it just didn't work out here, which is unfortunate. Maybe go to Bristol Rovers and spend some time with Josh Mack or something like that. So, in terms of players who have temporarily left the football club, Stefan Negru has gone to Tranmere Rovers. Connor, speak to us about Tranmere's season in League Two, because of course he did spend the first half of the campaign out on loan at Bristol Rovers, I think, and he'd had a bit of a spotty time with the gas, hadn't he?
Yeah, but everybody there had a bit of a spotty time with the gas, or even old Josh McEachran, but things. It's just been an absolute disaster down at Bristol Rovers, and that's more up from the boardroom and it seeps down into the dressing room and down onto the playing field. But with regards to Tranmere Rovers, they're not exactly having the best time of it either. They've lost their last 6, which that isn't Negri's fault because he's literally just got there. But it's another challenge. It's another relegation. It's another relegation battle. I think that he's going to have to put up and contend with. At the moment, Tranmere are far, far better than who's at around the bottom, like your Shrewsbury's, your Harrogates, your Newports. But it's a shame because it's a far cry from what Negri was challenging with last year when he was at Salford.
Yeah.
And I'll be absolutely honest, I'm surprised that we didn't send him back again to Salford, because I'm sure that Robinson would have loved to have gone back in and brought him back to Salford. But yeah, I'll be even surprised if Negri's able to have, as big an impact as he'd like at Tranmere, and it might be, it might come the case that in the summer that he's out permanently.
I was going to say, do you think this is the end of his Oxford United career? Because it's really unfortunate, is it? He was, when he came in, he was a bit of a shining light. I think in the relegation or the near relegation campaign, was a bit part player in the promotion season, and last year got some valuable experience at Salford, but he's just never been able to have a consistent run of games, and never, I think, really been given the trust of any manager. I think it's really unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, Tranmere have the leakest defence in League Two, so unfortunately, I think they think that Stefan Negri is going to solve their problems with the defence that they have. That's more of an indictment on their squad building than it is on Stefan Negri, unfortunately.
So the other loanee that departed, or player that left Oxford on a loan, I should say, in January was Tom Bradshaw. He has returned to Barnsley, where I think it's fair to say he had the most successful spell of his career. Of course, his longest tenure was at Millwall, but at Barnsley actually scored a lot of goals. Barnsley, I mean, on the deadline day, their attack got completely torn apart by Wrexham and other dealings in the transfer window, and I think a lot of their fan base, as much as they love Bradshaw for what he did previous, him and McGoldrick is, let's say, a very experienced double up top, isn't it?
Tom Bradshaw is there. I'm trying to think whenever an Oxford player's come back, and we've like years later. It's just not. Tom Bradshaw was a brilliant player 15, 16, 14, 15 for Barnsley, but he just isn't Davis Killer done, is he?
No.
No.
And it is a shame for Barnsley because, like you say, they've got a lot of money for a 28-year-old in Kilo Dunn, and then bring in Tom Bradshaw, who's, to be honest, barely kicked the ball, never scored a competitive goal for Oxford United. He scored against Mansfield in the in pre-season, and that was about it. So the final departure was a man I was personally quite gutted by, but we'll get into this in a minute. Filip Krastev was recalled by Lommel and has gone out to the Turkish First Division. Godzep is, I believe, the name of the team. He's gone to join, I believe they're in the City Football Group, so it's a transfer within the group for Filip Krastev. I was expecting this when we got into the window, Connor, and I think you were as well.
Yeah, I think most fans were. He scored a goal against Norwich, but the only decent appearance I can remember him making was his debut against Bristol City at Ashton Gate, and it just hasn't worked out. And I think they're just needed to get rid of him so we could bring in new reinforcements. Unfortunately, I think that Krastev might be the answer to a fair few pub quiz questions.
I will stand up for him and say, I think his the second half of the first half and his second half performance against Ipswich was pretty good. That assist that he gets for Lancashire is good. Obviously, he is at fault for Philogene goal in that game that gives Ipswich the lead. I think he had more than the number of good performances that the rest of the fan base think. But he's obviously a phenomenally talented footballer. But I don't think that the position we're in was right for a player like Filip Krastev. As much as we were hoping he'd be the problem solver, the system we were playing at the time didn't really benefit him, and he couldn't get he never really got a consistent run of minutes. He got, the odd game on the bounce, but never got a run like Pshemi got or Mills started to get towards the back end of Rowett's reign.
Does that say then that Rowett didn't really trust Krastev if he wasn't starting, because he came into not so much fanfare, but there was a lot of excitement because of what he'd done in the Eredivisie? So whatever went on behind the scenes, or whatever he was showing in training, obviously wasn't enough for Rowett to start him. And I think that a lot of fans, unfortunately, lost a bit of faith in him pretty quickly, and only showed up every now and then.
Yeah, that's a fair point, to be fair. So let's talk about the incomings, which we all love to talk about. Let's start with another former Eredivisie man, the arrival of a man we mentioned a little bit ago. Ruben Ruskin comes in from Huddersfield on loan with an obligation to buy. This was, when the rumours started going around about this, Connor, I think I put in the group chat, oh God, I hope this isn't true. Talk to us about Ruskin, because his performance, as we mentioned, against Coventry was actually pretty good for a player who has not played in the Championship.
Yeah, natural-sided left-footed player. He's He's done okay at Huddersfield. He's put in some solid performances. 'Cause he came straight in last season from Heracles, where a certain Brian de Keersmacher was, straight into League One. See, I don't really think he's been given that much of an opportunity at Huddersfield, where he was under Lee Grant, and now also what he's under Liam Manning as well now, and let him go. Trying to think back to who was the manager last season in League One. Duff. That was the manager, wasn't it, in Huddersfield. Wasn't really given a great opportunity under him either. So, and I think that a lot of Huddersfield fans, when we were looking at social media, Sam, they were trying to work out how he's, in quotes, failed upwards. Maybe he just wasn't being played, in the right position where he was supposed to, and in the right system. So he put in a decent display against Coventry at the weekend. He's just got to keep those up. And as I said earlier, he's a natural left wing back and playing in a system that is meant for left wing backs in a back five.
100%. And also it's very much one of the typical transfer deadline stories that, we don't always have at Oxford United. And he said that he didn't even tell his partner or his parents about his move. It materialised so quickly for his arrival to Oxford United. Obviously, we'd also been linked with Pickering from Blackburn. But I think I mentioned in the group chat that after Ishmael was sacked, I would have been surprised if we got him, because he probably wants to stick around and prove to the new manager what he can do. There was an interesting point made, we mentioned it, we reference it a lot over the lifetime of this podcast, but on the Dub podcast by Jerome Sale about the loans and, the club utilising all these loans with options and obligations to buy. Talk to us, Connor. Is this the norm for sides kind of mid-season at the bottom end of the second division, looking for those new reinforcements? Because, there has been some theorised that, we mentioned it on a previous podcast, maybe that's, to help us build for a League One side if we can sign these players, get them the necessary points, and then bring them in on permanence.
Yeah, you could say that, but as you say, that's a big gamble that a lot of clubs would be taking, bringing in a fair few loans with an obligation to buy if they hit certain criteria. Because what if they hit that certain criteria, you get relegated, then you immediately lost £8 million in television revenue. That might be the position that Oxford United are in come May the 31st. So I sincerely hope that isn't what we've done, but I think there might be. This would steer it into another conversation, so I'll try and keep it back on track. But if that is the case, then there might be a bit of more of a discussion that needed about Ed Waldron. But I'm sure that we'll have that discussion whether we stay up or not come the end of the season. But I think that when clubs, especially because I think that Oxford, in the grand scheme of things in the EFL, when we look at other clubs recently who haven't been run very well in terms of their finances, are quite a very well run club. So I'd like to think that. These decisions and these financial decisions have been made knowing that we might be able to attain them. Like I think of Donnelly when he came in, and what was his there was an option to buy, am I right? And that
reported option of £4.5 million.
Exactly, yeah. There's no way that we would be able to afford £4.5 million. You know what I mean? So,
but also
I'm sure that there's some. Yeah, I'm sure that there's some caveats that clubs make, so that they don't need to pay all of that money should any action be decided.
I was going to say, I wonder if that £4.5 million likely with the Makoto deal is subject to reaching certain certain parameters and all that kind of thing.
It's got to be, because when you think about it, when it's reported or when journalists see it, they just go straight for the higher number. So there's more of a story, more clicks, etc.
Yeah, 100%. Also, a nice addition that we saw on Saturdays. We've got a left back wearing number 12. I don't know why. I just think that just seems right. It shouldn't be on a number 10 like Luke Harris was. But anyway, that's the stupid squad numbers thing that fascinates an anorak like myself. So that's one deadline day signing. The other was a bit more exciting. Adomo Amanku has arrived from Millwall. An undisclosed fee from all the reports I have read. This is a very, very talented footballer Connor, not been given a massive chance in Millwall shirt, has he? From the numbers that I can see, he's been involved in 28 matches, but he's only started 13. A lot of Millwall fans were unhappy that he's been allowed to leave on a permanent. Talk to us about the season that Amaku has had.
Yeah, I think it's very much like Ruskin as well. So Millwall, London, Neil Harris. It's been the same this year as it was for the previous three, not really given his opportunity. He's put in, I think one of his biggest problems was putting in consistently good performances. Like he's popped up every now and then recently. Well, the last game he had before he went, he scored in the 4-0 against Charlton. He's been popping up with some assists, like I think of one against Ipswich, I think where they went earlier in the season and they went on 1-2-1. So he's definitely got the quality there. He can show it. And I think that a lot of Millwall fans, they were saying like, this is a good young player. Yeah, he's been here for 4 years, but he's still only 22. And, you know, they see that he hasn't been given that opportunity and he can, when at the right club, he can display what he's got. And it being a 3.5-year deal, we know we've got him when we go into League One. And I'm sure that if we go into League One, that we've got one of the, hopefully will be one of the better or top 10 players in League One. And again, like I say about buying, hopefully it's an undisclosed fee, but another one of these buying young, buying low, and hopefully selling high.
Yeah. I also like that it's a bit of a roundabout way of tapping back into the Irish market that we used to do under KR. Because, you know, obviously we had some very, very good players come out of the Irish League. So Amaku again didn't do too much. I think he was the quieter of the two debutants on Saturday. I think he did struggle with the type of game it was. It wasn't really the ideal fixture for a player like him. He's quite a direct runner, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. And I think that Oxford fans will like that.
But it's one of those games when you're sitting in a low block, it's not really the type of game for a young direct runner to come into the lineup. But yeah, welcome to Ruskin and Amaku, lads. You know, obviously we'll give you all the support needed because bloody hell, we're going to need you two to perform on the pitch. And again, the Anorak thing, I kind of expected once Matt Phillips left that someone's going to get the number 10 shirt, and it's gone to Amaku. And nice to swap there an older model for a newer model, both wearing that shirt. Let's cap off, Connor, by talking about, of course, we've got a double match week tomorrow and, of course, on Sunday. Tomorrow, a league fixture, a very important league fixture against Norwich. Now, obviously, under Philippe Clement, they've really had a turnaround. They're out of the relegation zone. But a bit of a concern from the Norwich perspective because obviously Josh Sargent, as of the moment, has not been reintegrated after his desire to leave for Toronto in the January window. And their top goal scorer from the last recent spell, McCartney, is out injured. But do you know how serious that injury is?
I actually don't know. I hope that it's pretty serious because then he's fairly out. No, I don't know how serious it is, but I suspect that he won't be playing tomorrow night. Which I'll be honest, Sam, I don't think it will make that much of a difference because I think that a lot of fans, including myself, had the idea that if Josh Sargent wasn't playing, then that's it. Then Norwich City are done. But they've proved over the past 6 weeks that without Josh Sargent, they've probably been a better team without him. Which is very, very unusual after he's been thrown a stinker. And I think that's kudos to Philippe Clement. He's came in and it's a lot of fans were looking, I think even Norwich fans were thinking, how the hell have they managed to get him? Because he was undoubtedly an upgrade on Liam Manning and he has made them undoubtedly a much, much better side. And it's going to be tough tomorrow night, unfortunately. But, you never know. We tend to up our game and play better against teams that are, playing of a higher quality of football compared to us. So hopefully the OX4 will recognise that and they'll be up for it under the lights.
Of course, we played them back in, I think it was the end of November, it was one of Clement's first handful of games. How have they kind of grown as a side under Clement, to the point where they have climbed away from the relegation zone more than some possibly would have expected them to?
They're a lot more exciting to watch. They go about. They have a lot more confidence about them. They seem to know what they're doing. They have a greater cohesion about them. Whereas I thought under a certain previous occupant, it all looked a bit disjointed and there wasn't enough respect. It looks as if that Clement's gone in and he's really stamped his authority, and the players have responded. I think that it's going to be another backs to the wall session. I think that Norwich will know this, and they'll know that. I think that they can come here, they can get another 3 points and really, really extend themselves away from the bottom three. So I think that as long as Oxford fans, we can hold, as long as we don't come out and it's the exact same, another back, well, it's going to be another back three. What I'm trying to say is another display as it was against Birmingham. First 5 minutes, and then we sit back and then just soak up the pressure. That's going to be something that we're going to have to deal with and contend with, because Norwich, as I said, without their two strikers, they're still a very good team.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the relegation battle, we should mention that Leicester's points deduction was applied, a 6-point deduction, so they are within reach. I think they're 4 points off. They're on level on points with, I think, Portsmouth and Blackburn, I think. From your understanding, Connor, there were jokes as soon as it was announced, the lucky bastards have only got away with 6 and stuff like that. Do you think they were quite lucky to get away with 6, or do you think, based off previous points deductions, that's about right?
No, they should have got more. And that's not even me through yellow tinted glasses. It should have been far more. The Premier League were wanting 20, which I think would have been, to be fair to them, a bit excessive, but they knowingly broke the rules over a fair number of years. They broke it over a period of 3 years. They knew what they were doing, and when they got found out and they knew that they did it, they stuck their middle fingers up and found a loophole. That's what they've done, and it's come home to roost. I think only 6 points is a massive slap in the face to a club like us and like us and Portsmouth, who have been trying to do it the right way and spend within our reasons and within PSR or FFP as it was back then. And it's almost like we could say, well, why don't we go do that and we'll only get 6 point deduction? I don't think that it's 2 wins that they've had taken away from them. I don't really think that the punishment is befitting of the crime.
So the other game that we've got is on Sunday, a 2:00 kickoff, the day after Valentine's. So the FA Cup have decided we can all have a nice, enjoyable day with our partners, and then we've got to go watch Oxford United play 90 minutes against the Premier League side. Obviously, they're a side we know very, very well. Last played them back in April, beating them by 2-0 to confirm our survival. That was obviously a game in the middle of their really perplexing run, leading into their eventual promotion in the playoffs. And I did enjoy that some Sunderland fans, when the draw was announced, were like, why aren't Oxford fans excited for this game? We're a Premier League side in the top half. And our response was, because we played you God knows how many times in the past decade. What are you thinking? Do you think they're going to massively rotate so we might be able to take a scalp? Or, because obviously they play midweek as well against Liverpool. So you'd think theoretically they're going to field obviously a weakened side in Premier League sense is still a very, very good one with, as we saw with Brighton, several tens of millions of pounds worth of players.
That's exactly what I think it's going to be. They're going to rotate and still have tens of millions of pounds worth of players. So I think that Sunderland are going to look at the FA Cup and think, yeah, we're good. They're safe. Let's be honest about it. They're not going to get relegated. Nice. So then they'll be looking at this thinking it's a chance for a bit of silverware and it's a chance for another trip to Wembley. So I wouldn't put it past them to put out a fairly strongish side. I wouldn't expect to see like the likes of Granit Xhaka, let's put it that way. The Regis livery will save him for Liverpool if he's fit and able to play. But I'll put it this way, Sam. I am not bothered about this game in the slightest. If we win, happy days. If we don't, oh no, we have the league to focus on, which is
100%. I was going to say I'm not sure kind of what their lineups looked recently, but the fact they could in a heartbeat swap out Brian Brobby for Wilson Isidore is a bit of a joke. But we'll see what happens. We went into that game with them in April, with, thinking our back's going to be up against the wall. We might get walloped, but We managed to win 2-0. So you never know what can happen in the magic of the FA Cup. Even though the magic of the FA Cup kind of vanished several years ago. Viewers, thanks so much for watching this episode of Walking the London Road. As always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It massively helps us out in the algorithm. We really appreciate the support we've had on the last couple of podcasts. Go and follow myself and Connor and, of course, Will on Twitter. Our handles are on screen and in the tweet. And we'll see you for a review of our trip to the Castad to play Norwich and Sunderland next week. We'll see you later.